So my name is Samantha Karpa. I'm an engineer with Kennedy Jenks, and I'll be moderating this session. We have two speakers here. We have Jenny Gaus, as well as Michelle Perdue. Jenny Gaus is the Strategic Surface Water Advisor for the City of Kirkland, and Michelle Perdue is the Stormwater Program Manager for Kitsap County. And just to make sure everyone's here in the right spot, this is the Stormwater Parks presentation. And when I say Stormwater Parks, in the context of this presentation, we'll be discussing facilities that provide both a stormwater management benefit to the community, as well as a recreation and engagement opportunity as well. And our speakers will be sharing guidance and lessons learned from planning, construction, and maintaining of stormwater parks. So without further ado.
All right, thank you. I'm going to send the first part of the presentation over here. This first portion was actually developed by Erica Harris with the Puget Sound Regional Council, and she has been doing really great work to raise awareness of stormwater parks. So this first part of the presentation is just kind of a teaser. Stormwater parks are really cool. They have lots of benefits. And then I will give some specific examples of how we've worked with stormwater parks in the city of Kirkland. And then Michelle will talk about her excellent work in Kitsap County. So why stormwater parks? They have a lot of different benefits. You can add recreation to an area, you treat and store your stormwater. You can address equity if they're in an area that has a gap in your parks plan in terms of equity. They can support tribal treaty rights and that they're working on making receiving waters higher quality. They can add natural features and wildlife habitat, and they can be funded by multiple sources, which is always important. And so again, the Puget Sound Regional Council has been working on stormwater parks. One of the ways they've done that is by getting a grant from the National Estuary Program to work on with specific cities on stormwater parks by offering them technical assistance, and then by producing a guidance document, and also by producing a wonderful website that has lots of examples and resources. And so these next slides, again, are just teasers of some of the ways, what stormwater parks can look like, what they can do. I'm not going to go through details on all of these, but just give you a sort of a flavor. So here's one from the city of Arlington, and there are pages about each of these on the PSRC website. They did a constructed wetland that has trails, it's a 21-acre park, and a large 280-acre drainage basin area. This is an older facility in the city of Bellevue, Lakemont, and many of you have probably heard of this. This was probably one of the first of this type of facility. It's a detention and sand filter treatment, has recreation, drainage basin area of about 215 acres. The city of Poulsbo did this as part of, it was required as part of, I believe, a part of a development. It's a pond that provides flow control and treatment. Again, recreation, trails. So these are all sort of above ground facilities. The city of Seattle had issues with flooding, had some pretty serious problems in the Madison Valley area, and so built this facility that is flow control mostly. And it also has recreation, gathering spaces, and play areas. It's about 0.84 acres total. So it shows you can do something even in a tight urban area that really makes a difference. The city of Shoreline did the Cromwell Park project. Again, added a construction wetland was added to an existing park during a major park renovation. It does treatment and flow and flood control. City of Tacoma did the Point Defiance stormwater treatment. It's a large facility in only 5,500 square feet. They have a drainage basin area of 754 acres that gets treated. So again, a lot of treatment in a small area, and a beautiful add to the park. And then Erica also just is very wants to get the idea out there that, again, these things can be really beautiful. They can be in urban areas. They can have a lot of art incorporated in them and be really, really nice additions to the cityscape. And this one is in the city of Portland. Okay, so then these next slides, again, I'm going to zoom through these. So with the grant, the National Estuary Program grant, chose cities from around the region and had them work with AHBL to get technical assistance. And that could be whatever the city wanted and needed that they felt would help move a stormwater park forward. And so, again, I don't feel that we have time to go through all the different details of these, but gives you some flavor. The city of Linwood did an above ground facility, and they designed a park that had a new playground. So they got mostly design and sort of landscape architecture type assistance with their project. City of Marysville got sizing of their runoff treatment. Bioretention is what they chose to do. And then again, help with the park design portion of the project. City of Puyallup took part of a 700-acre basin and again developed some runoff treatment and got help again with design and putting just a something that they can then take forward towards construction and use in their public outreach. So Woodinville, same sort of thing. They did there's a park that is right next to the Sammamish River, and they took an existing sort of underused tennis court and put a facility underneath that. And then again, we got design assistance and a good layout that they can then take forward. So some of the lessons learned, we're going to go through these, I think Michelle and I, and so I will not dwell on this particular slide, but again, you can achieve multiple benefits. It takes a lot of extra work, but it's worth it to collaborate with your partners. And you need to consider lots of things ranging from climate change to maintenance needs to all sorts of stuff. So, okay. And this is the planning process, and wanted to talk about the guidance document. Again, this is available on the PSRC website, has lots of really nice tables of, about the types of recreation facilities you might want to consider, the types of planning collaboration that will help move your project forward. So lots of really good information collapsed into one place. So I definitely suggest that you take a look at that. Okay, so moving on to Kirkland. Again, we participated in this grant project and proposed to use the North Rose Hill open space, which the first thing it needs is a better name. It was an open space that was in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. And it was an identified gap area in our pros plan. So the Parks Department said, we need a park here. And there was a citywide trail connection that goes under. There's a power corridor that runs north-south, and there was a desire for a connection through this parcel. From the stormwater part of things, we had done retrofit planning in this area with Jacobs and had identified this as a site. It drains to Forbes Creek. We have flooding issues and water quality issues. The upstream area is all residential area that's not likely to redevelop in a way that will require stormwater treatment or flow control. About 18 acres drained to there, and the soils might infiltrate. And to top it all off, we had a storm line that currently runs through the park that was in terrible shape that needs to be replaced anyway. So from a stormwater perspective, it was just there are a lot of reasons why it was a good idea. This just shows you some of the existing conditions. It was pretty much entirely covered with blackberries, no large trees. There were some encroachments. The Parks Department says it takes about 2 years to deal with encroachments, depending on what they are. So that's something you have to consider as you're moving forward. And again, we have a Seattle City Light easement over the property. We'll have to work with them as we want to develop the park. And our vehicle access is via a private street on the west. So we'll have to find new access. So it's basically a blank slate. Here's what it looks like now. So like not a lot of ways you can go down here. So a lot of ways you can go up. So we thought it was a good opportunity. And so what we asked for from AHBL was geotech. What I have found in retrofit planning I have done in other parts of the city is the more you know about your soils earlier, the better off you are. We started off with this site thinking that infiltration would be great. The early geotech work showed us that infiltration was not feasible. So that was really helpful. That pointed us toward bioretention. We also asked for some topographic survey just to know where those encroachments are and get the lay of the land. And then we asked for some preliminary engineering and some landscape design and a little bit of cost estimating so that we could move it forward through grants and or through the parks planning process. And so here's what we came out with. We had some sizing via bioretention. So bioretention, putting trails, again, connecting that regional trail. There's an overlook with some benches. And then we also wanted to add some native plantings because our Green Kirkland program had identified this as a site where they wanted pollinators. And so adding native plants that could do that pollinator function was important to us. So some of the lessons learned from this and other projects that I'll talk about in a second. In our city, we found that you really have to let parks lead. The Parks Recreation and Open Space Plan is a huge public outreach process, and people care super deeply about their parks and have a lot of input. Stormwater, people care about it, but they're not coming out of the woodwork to tell you about it. And so really we found that we have to let parks lead. And actually one thing that happened during this project was that our Parks Department did a new Parks Recreation and Open Space Plan. This site was no longer a gap for whatever reason. Priorities have changed. And so now we're sort of working on that and saying, well, okay, we have a design, we're ready, but Parks is saying it's not the priority right now. So we have to honor that, and we have to really, again, just work with them. And then the early geotech information is really helpful. And then I would say that we need to advocate for matched stormwater and park funding for reasons I'll talk about in just a sec. Some other stormwater parks that Kirkland has done. One that is just being completed now is 132nd Square Park. It takes 50 acres of upstream area and treats it, and then infiltrates it. And that has been just a fantastic collaboration. The field above it is now an artificial turf field, which has some stormwater issues, I know, but meant that we could put a giant vault underneath and get both functions in a way that is an incredible benefit for the community and for the Juanita Creek watershed. And again, we had another project that we had a similar 50 acres drained to this from a stormwater perspective. We were all like, go, go, go. We talked to our Parks Department and they were initially pretty excited about it. But then again, this new Parks Recreation and Open Space Plan happened. And it turned out that despite us having stormwater people having a conceptual design and even funding, that we needed parks to have time and resources to do a master plan for the park. And that they didn't have that. It was no longer a priority. And so that is a case where we will have it ready. Things do change, and we'll be ready when and if Parks has the resources to do a master plan. And so what we took away from that was that we really need to be, as stormwater people, we need to be ready. So what we're doing now is we're going to look at every park in Kirkland and what are the stormwater possibilities for that park. We're going to, and then figure out what can drain there, what type of facility might we put there, sort of do the homework and prioritize them from a stormwater perspective. Also look at our stormwater properties, because we have some properties that have ponds on them, and say, what kind of a park could that be? And so do everything we can to be ready to respond and just sort of slot stuff in as our Parks Department is ready and willing. And because it's not, they love working with us. And again, 132nd Square Park has been fantastic. It's just everything has to come together. And so the more we can be ready to have it all come together, the better. So that's what we're doing now. And we're doing that by doing a combination of GIS analysis and field work. So, all right. So next, Michelle.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
Let me shuffle over here. Shuffle over to Buffalo. All right. So thanks, everybody. And I really appreciate that there are so many of you guys in the room this late in the day. And that's really encouraging to me because, that tells me that you guys are really interested in these stormwater parks. And in Kitsap, we have been passionate about this concept for some time now. But really what I want to do today is to tell you a little bit about the story about our own stormwater park journey and how we got there. So Kitsap at one point in time, as probably many other jurisdictions do, really was focusing on addressing drainage, right? I mean, long ago, that was the problem that we were all trying to solve. But about a decade ago, we had some really forward-thinking elected officials and management in our organization that said, hey, rather than just treating drainage as something that, we need to get rid of, why don't we look at this in a more holistic way and really shift our focus and thought process from, just addressing that problem to creating a solution for sustainable growth. And one of the ways that they did that was they passed a policy that we call our water as a resource policy. And that says that we're going to treat water as a resource rather than a waste stream. And that really kicked off a shift in thinking for us, which has been really exciting over the years. So with that shift in thought process, that led us to these three really key elements. That was around the time that we were really making a strong move towards green stormwater infrastructure and using those technologies to mimic nature and natural processes. We also moved towards bigger and larger community-based and watershed-based planning. So, rather than do one facility here and one facility there, we looked at how we could treat a watershed on a watershed-wide basis. So maybe there was a large project here with a regional facility, but it was supported by things like culvert replacements and down to even like the rain garden scale at homes. So, looking at that more holistic view. And then finally, one of the ways that we really wanted to maximize this was a move towards these more multifunctional, multi-benefit stormwater systems, which sounds like a huge mouthful, but that's what as stormwater parks. So what we know about these stormwater parks are that they're retrofits at heart, right? So they're retrofits on a really large scale, treating a really large area. And we know that retrofits return some pretty significant value for what we're doing. So retrofits take care of what's already there. When you're building new, you're building to today's standards. When you're doing retrofits on this large scale, you're taking care of a lot of old drainage that wasn't built to, correct standards. So, we're really taking care of what's already out there. And in the end, what you're doing is you're protecting local waterways, and in our case, Puget Sound, which was of huge value to us. So as we went through our journey, a journey starts with a first step, right? So we had this little spot down in a community called Manchester. Manchester is a little tiny community just outside of Port Orchard, which is across the water from Seattle, if you know your geology or your geography. As you can see on the picture on the left, it has an absolutely beautiful view. So all of these people in these houses down there on the left-hand side, they sit kind of up on the side of a hill and they overlook Puget Sound and they've got a view of Seattle. So they're pretty vested in their location. They love where they live. They're a passionate little community. They have a lot of community involvement. And so what happened here was that we had a deteriorating outfall. You can see it down there on the right that we knew that we needed to fix. We knew we needed to get some treatment in that older neighborhood up there. We had about 100 acres of drainage that we needed to treat. And we had a lot down there really close to the water, right upstream of that outfall. And we said, hey, we need to get in there and do something. Maybe we'll go in and we'll put in a pond. And our community said, let's bring this to a screeching halt. Heck no, we do not want that. This is right in the middle of town. It's the first thing that you see as you set out in front of that beautiful view. There's a small little park down there that had some value to them that everybody was really vested in. And they really balked at us doing a project like that. So we walked away from that for a couple of years and went back to the drawing board and said, okay, well, now what can we do? And so, you've heard a lot in some previous sessions, if you've been in these ones that have talked about stormwater parks and the more technical part of it. And what I want to talk a little bit about today is about how we got to a stormwater park in that community. So these things don't happen in a vacuum. In order to get buy-in and usability for, these large facilities, you've got to get the community on board. So when we went back to the drawing board, we went back to the community and we went in there and did some intensive outreach and said, hey, we've got this lot. What do you want to see here? So we did about a year's worth of extensive outreach with the community. We pulled ideas from them. We sorted out what would and wouldn't work in that location and said, okay, we've winnowed this down to some desired things that you guys want to see here. Now let's see how we can make it happen. So here's how that worked. So here's what the community said that they wanted. So up on the right-hand side, each one of those little pullouts is something that in the design charrette with the community that we did with them, they said, hey, we really want to see this. We want to see good lighting. We want to see native planting. We want to see things like educational opportunities, environmental educational opportunities. We want to see some stormwater artwork. We want to see a natural feel that blends into the surroundings down there. They had a really distinctive flavor to, the design of that area. So we were able to take all of those elements in the long run and adapt them into that design that you see down in that bottom right corner. So 17 of those different elements that the community directly asked for went into the final design. And what I can tell you from that experience is that because they got what they wanted, and there were some trade-offs, we didn't turn it into a dog park, which was one of the ideas. We did not put in a band pavilion in the middle of the grassy area, which was another one, but we were able to do a lot of the things that they wanted. And you can see we still maintain the treatment cells all the way around the outside that performs the function of the stormwater park. So what it did for us though, and this one for us was really cutting edge for its time. We had cut our teeth on this one. It really set us up for success in the future because we had really good momentum engaging the community like that. This community uses that park on a continual basis. They've adopted it as their own. The people that live around there watch out for it. They really take care of it. Click. So just pointing out a couple of the things, that I found really significant out of this process that we were able to do. Down on that left-hand side, this is not just a park that treats stormwater. This is a park that incorporates stormwater art. This is a park that incorporates safety lighting, which is one of the things that they asked us for. They said, don't make this a little dark corner, where people can hide out and do vandalism or whatever. We want to make sure that we've got lighting. So we put in benches, we put in lighting, and it's all in the same theme of water that ties that whole park in together. We obviously have our cells, which is performing the function that we need it to. But then the last thing that I wanted to show you on this one that I thought was really cool is that over Christmas, that Christmas tree in the middle, they asked us for a port in the center of that grassy area where they could put their Christmas tree and plug it in. So we were able to do that for them. They have their annual Christmas tree lighting down there every year. They have flea markets. They have 4th of July parades that center around this park. They have outings, and there were 1,000 people in that little tiny park over Christmas for their Christmas tree lighting. So that to me is a really big success. So building off of that success and with, the wonderful grant from PSRC that we were able to also take advantage of. We really wanted to move on to our next big stormwater park option. So obviously we've got an area here that has a 72.5 acre contributing basin that we needed to treat. And fortunately for us, we had a couple lots that the county owned right there in that little yellow square. So the nice part about this location was that if you look down there to the left-hand side, that is Dyes Inlet. And in our SMAP process, that was identified, that particular watershed was identified as our priority watershed because it's an impaired water body. So we had a lot in the right place. We had a significant amount of drainage that was able to drain to it. We already owned that parcel. We had a storm line that was right there nearby. And all of the dominoes were lined up for this to be a successful project. The other bonus to this location too was that it also has some connectivity to our existing trail and non-motorized system. So very cool, very great and in the right spot. This before shot down here in the right corner does not do justice to how bad it looked a year ago before we cut the blackberries down. You could barely see it. But the advantage to this one is that it used to be a home. So when we cut all the blackberries down, what we found there was a lot of big existing beautiful trees that we're hoping to be able to preserve too. And the community is pretty excited about that piece. So one of the elements about this is that by putting a stormwater park in this location, we're not just adhering to our water as a resource policy and our goals, but this also plays into things like our comp plan goals and, you know, the community goals for this particular location. Things like coordinating stormwater treatment as part of a larger regional system, expanding and improving access to parks and green space, and providing improved community gathering places that provide a sense of place. It's all a mouthful really for doing, you know, just essentially what we've done in a couple of other locations. So this is a very exciting project for us. One of the other pieces that's really exciting about this is that we have a brand new equity atlas that we're using to determine, you know, where the best bang for our buck is as far as environmental justice in Kitsap. So we ran this project site through that equity atlas, and what we found was this particular site is in the most diverse area of our jurisdiction. And what that means is it's within a 1 mile radius of 5 of the top 8 most diverse census tracts in unincorporated Kitsap. And all of our top 8 most diverse census tracts are located within a 2 mile radius. So this neighborhood, you know, to the northeast of that site doesn't really have a little park to use. The nearest park facilities are quite a ways away. So we're creating space and green space for a location that didn't have it before. So again, you know, going back to that outreach process, when we first started with AHBL with the preliminary design for this, we said, hey, we want to go out to the community and ask them what they want here. And this is just a little bit about what they told us that they wanted in this space. So I wanted to give you guys just a little taste of it before we got to the final. And this is what we came up with as our preliminary design. Now, obviously that's got a long way to go, but you can see that it's got a lot of the things that you saw on the previous slide. It's got our stormwater treatment, you know, which is what we want. It also has things like usable green space and walking trails and vegetated buffers between the adjacent parcels, you know, that are owned by homes. So, you know, I mean, it's hitting on a lot of the things that we feel like are going to make it more accepted in the community and adopted, hopefully, and loved. So here's my challenge to you guys. You know, you heard a lot about, you know, how to figure out the technical aspects of it. You saw a lot of, you know, really big facilities, you know, on a large scale, a large expensive scale. And what I want to tell you is they don't always have to be that. They can be that, but they don't always have to be. So, you know, there is more than one way to skin this cat. If you can't do those big multi-million-dollar projects, start small, because you can do things like what we've done here with renaturalizing a pond and doing something as simple as adding a walking trail around it as an amenity for that adjacent apartment building. So, you know, it doesn't have to be huge, just start to think creatively and think out of the box, and where you can incorporate these elements into things that you might already have. And then finally, you know, when you're doing these thought processes and these plannings for the future, look forward, not just at the problem that you're solving today, but start to think about, you know, the problems that you could solve in the future. So, you know, is it, you know, the urban heat island? Do you need to add some trees into a location? You know, are you looking at climate change impacts? You know, what are those small pieces that you can work into a project that's going to have lasting benefits down the road?